reality of crime.
Hello, everybody. What's up? I am Jay with Guilty of Crime, and today I did a pop-up. I'm going to do the Collier Landry story, a murder in Mansfield. He testified against his father for taking his mother's life. Now, the name of the actual documentary is not what YouTube likes, but it's called A Murder in Mansfield. So I'm doing a pop-up because he is not feeling good today, and so he's going to come next week and join us. But I figured let's get the story out. I'll be back on at 4 today to do my normal spiel. Hello, Lori. What's up? Marilyn, how you doing? Anna, please do support my channel. Hit the like button, y'all, and share this because he will be back on. Collier Landry will be back on next Tuesday at 4 o'clock. So let's go over his story real quick. We're going to get right into it. And I'm going to tell you, first of all, Collier Landry is already grown up, as you know. Great guy. I talked to him today. Wasn't feeling well. So his case is in Erie, Pennsylvania, when he was 11 years old, 1989. That's him on the screen. His father, John Boyle, took his mother's life. Noreen Boyle, his dad was a doctor, and he hit his mother in the head, and then he suffocated her by placing a plastic bag over her head. He later buried her body under the basement floor of a new home in Erie, Pennsylvania. Then he moved a new wife in. So Collier, little Collier that you see right there, despite his age, he played a crucial role in the investigation, and he testified against his father, which must be really scary at that age. So he also had a sister, Elizabeth, who was only 3 years old at the time. Now, Dr. Boyle's conviction played a big part. The conviction happened because Collier stood up. Now, his dad did get 20 years to life in prison for aggravated murder and abuse of a corpse, another 18 months. His dad is now up for parole in 2025. Now, this case got even bigger because Collier is now a filmmaker, and he made a documentary called Murder in Mansfield. Really crazy. So we're going to go over this story real quick. I'm going to play this with you guys. I'll chat. You've never heard of it, but I wanted you to hear of it, Ellie Cat, because he's going to be back on next Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Today he was feeling sick, but this case is insane, and you're going to recognize Collier when he comes on, and when you start to see him, you're going to really recognize who this guy is. So I wanted you to know about it, so when he comes on, you can ask him questions, and we can, sympathize, empathize, all that stuff. We're still doing a normal 4 o'clock today, but hit the like button, get me in the algorithm, get your memberships. A lot of you are not in the green. Get your green gift memberships, whatever, support the channel. Thank you. All right, let's go.
And could you tell the jury why you didn't?
Because I was extremely afraid of my father, and I always have.
This is 12-year-old Collier Landry, the only witness in a murder case involving his own father, Dr. Jack Boyle.
How long were you and Noreen married?
Almost 20 years. And allegedly her body was found under my basement in a new home in Erie, Pennsylvania on January 25th.
Any children?
Yes, one natural child, Collier.
How does he feel about all this? I mean,
Well, he's very distraught. He was manipulated.
Now, keep this in mind. That's his dad speaking right there, Jack Dr. Jack Boyle. So he's sitting there talking about his son and says he's very distraught. He was manipulated by David, which is one of the police department officers, and a few other people. So yes, think about this. This was in 1989, and he got 20 years plus 18 on top of that. So we're already in 2024. Next year, October 2025 is when he's up for parole. So we're going to ask Collier how he feels about that. Now, he's had face-to-faces with his father, and he wants closure. So I'm going to show you a clip after that, and then next week we're going to ask him, what's going on? What have you talked to him about? We're going to ask him all the things, and he's going to tell us his story.
By David Messmore of the Mansfield Police Department and a few other people. So the child basically was brainwashed into thinking his daddy's a murderer.
Collier sidled up to me and he started whispering. And he said, my mother would never leave me. This is not right. My mother would never do this. In our line of work, we call that a clue.
Compelled to fight his own father, 12-year-old Collier Landry didn't hesitate to face off against the local police department, the media, and even his own family to find his mother. With a little help from one dissident detective, he summoned his courage and started investigating on his own. But little did he know, he was also on the list of his father's future victims.
The thing that was overwhelming that fear was my desire to find out what happened to my mother and get justice for her.
In the city of Mansfield, Ohio, known for its steelwork and heavy industry, 11-year-old Collier lives with his father Jack, his mother Noreen, and his newly adopted sister, Elizabeth. At the time, Jack's by far the most successful doctor in town.
He had what the investigators called.
Now, this was in Mansfield, but when I said Erie, Pennsylvania, he later buried her body under the basement floor of a new home in Erie, Pennsylvania. It's crazy. This is quite a story. And that 11-year-old is really strong for doing this when everybody opposed him. It does seem like yesterday, and you will recognize Collier as a man. I do believe he's a filmmaker, and he's on every channel. When I looked him up, I was like, wow, I've seen that face.
The largest medical practice in Richland County. 1 out of 13 people used Dr. Boyle as their physician.
But behind closed doors, Jack was a completely different person. Described as a rageaholic by his wife, the man has a quick temper and often goes off without a warning. One day, while Collier was sitting in the living room playing video games, he fell victim to one of his father's bouts.
He just started ripping off all the games and throwing them at my head. Then he started making me call myself a stupid little fat boy, saying, what are you? And I'd say a stupid little fat boy. And he'd say even larger, what are you? And I said, a stupid little fat boy.
This clip was from 1990. At the time, Collier was still a child, but as an adult, he isn't shy of saying the actual words his father used to torture him psychologically.
My father called me a pussy and a little fat and all these derogatory terms, not to use the word of the day, but this is truly toxic masculinity, treating your son this way.
But his other faults were hardly a secret to anyone. Everybody in town knew of his infidelities, and Jack never had to face the consequences of his actions until the day he casually introduced his latest girlfriend to his own son.
My dad got out and he said, well, look who's here. It's Sherry. And then I turned to Sherry and I looked at her hand and she had a ring on. And I turned to her and I said, Sherry, my mother has a ring like that.
After Collier noticed the ring.
Wow. Very observant and crazy because we're in 2024 and this case is like many that we see nowadays, right? We see this all the time on court TV where somebody's parent, mother or father, mostly men, but women do it too, will get rid of the wife, bring somebody new in, throw different pictures up and replace them. Many times they don't go as far as to use the same wedding ring because police are starting to catch on. So Savage Barbie, good to see you. I came on as a pop-up today. I'm just doing a pop-up story of Collier Landry before he comes on next week. Today he was sick. So I wanted you to know the story before he came on so you guys can ask the correct questions. Now, he's been all over TV. He's been on, everyone's been on Dr. Phil that's had issues, right? But he's a filmmaker, so he's all over the internet. If you Google him, all right? So crazy that he did that. It's interesting because nowadays, because the police department is so aware of somebody getting rid of their wife and replacing them, they're not as bold as to just take the wedding ring off of their finger and put it on the new wife. He did. All right. And Collier said, I'm not going to have that.
He knew he had to tell Noreen.
I knew I was in an impossible position. I said, Mom, please sit down. There's something I have to tell you. I think Daddy has a girlfriend.
Noreen had reached her limit. She already knew about Jack's cheating, but involving Collier in his affairs was the last straw, so she filed for divorce. Jack tried to convince her to leave Ohio and start fresh, but they ended up staying for the holidays, during which it all went relatively well, until New Year's Eve, when Collier was awakened by a piercing scream coming from his parents' bedroom.
Shortly after that, his father, he heard him walking down the hallway to his room. And he remembers his father opening the door and looking in at him for a long period of time.
Paralyzed by fear, Collier didn't move an inch and waited for his father to leave his room. He kept trying to make sense of what just happened. In the morning, he finally found the courage within himself to get out of his room and face Jack.
And so I went downstairs and I said, "Where's my mother?" To my father. And he said, "Well, Mommy took a little vacation, Collier." And then I didn't know what to say. I just panicked. And
How many times nowadays in the last, let's say even since COVID, has this happened? I can probably get a whole document full of cases that are just like this. And with social media, you see it even closer because all of a sudden you see a husband and a wife and their kids. And then a year later, they're divorced. There's a new wife in there. But social media tracks you so hard. Everybody noticed. So this is before all the social media boom where single, widowed. Now you got a new person. And this little boy is noticing at 11 years old. Nowadays, many kids don't even get into that. They don't question the parent. They just move on, and maybe they know something. Maybe they're abused behind closed doors. But that's what happened to Collier. He started being abused after his father took his mother's life. He started abusing him. So, and that could happen to any 11-year-old child.
so I said, and he said she'll be back in a few days, and then she just left.
Convinced his mother wouldn't just leave him, Collier grabbed her phone book and ran upstairs before his father.
So I'd hidden these phone numbers. I take the cordless phone, I go into the bathroom, then I lock the door, and I start calling every single one of my mother's friends. And I tell them what happened. I said, "I need you to call the police."
While talking to his mother's friends, Collier remembered how scared and depressed his mother had been during the past few years. He couldn't believe he would have to deal with his father on his own from now on.
There's a sadness in her eyes. There was just such a sadness with her because she felt so alone. And she probably felt very trapped. And that there was no way out.
When the police arrived, Jack simply told them that he and Noreen got into an argument and she left the house by her own means.
Do you have occasion to talk to Noreen early morning of December 31st of 1989?
Yes, I was on the sofa in the family room, and Noreen came down and woke me up and threw credit cards at me.
Did you leave the house then?
Mm-hmm. Yes, she did. I saw Noreen get into a car at the edge of the driveway.
Left in that car?
Left in that car.
He insisted on knowing who called them and only gave up the hard look he had towards Collier when the officer said it was one of Noreen's friends.
I'm afraid of my father. And I think my father just killed my mother. So I'm really afraid of him, and I'm afraid for my life. I know that every day, the longer the time goes on, my life is in more and more danger.
At this point, mere days.
Now, I wonder, and I pose the question to you all, which we'll talk to, when we talk to him, I'm definitely going to ask him what he thinks. I'm definitely going to ask him, does he think that his father would have been different would the situation be different if Collier wasn't afraid of his dad? What if he wasn't afraid of his dad and he was, a daddy's boy, and dad spoiled him and took him to buy stuff, and the tables were different. The mom goes missing, a new wife comes in, and the dad treated him well, wasn't abusing him. Would he have gotten away with it? That poor little guy. But you know what? Collier is not a little guy anymore. He's actually a really successful man. And he's so self-aware. It's crazy. He's above and beyond many people that are his age and my age and your age. So welcome. Thank you guys for being here. Next Tuesday, he'll be on to tell his story to you and answer questions. Today he's not feeling well. So let's get to this, and then we'll roll over to our 4 o'clock, the rest of the audio that I have.
Days after Noreen was declared missing, nobody suspected foul play. Collier was only a kid after all, and Jack's story made sense. Even David Messmore, a renowned detective from the region, was easily deceived by the situation.
So if you looked at the actual circumstances, they were believable. The fact that she walked out the door, she was very upset. I don't know whether other issue may have come up, maybe another girlfriend or something like that, and would have caused her to just up and leave. And that's not beyond belief. It's not even unusual in our business.
When Messmore met with Collier for the first time, he seemed distraught, repeating over and over that his mother would never leave him. But Christine Boyle, Jack's 76-year-old mother, quickly dismissed his claims. She was also present on the night of Noreen's disappearance and did hear some commotion, but went on to support Jack's story. She told the detective that 3 years ago, during the holidays, Noreen got into a fight with him and left without warning, only to come back the next day. She explained that her son asked her to take care of Collier and Elizabeth while he went to Erie, Pennsylvania, to work on the new home he purchased as part of their plan to move away. Days went by without any signs of Jack or Noreen until one neighbor tipped the police, claiming that he was up very early on January 1st, and they didn't notice anyone leaving their home at the time. So they showed up to investigate, but this time had a whole forensic unit ready to comb through the house.
When we arrived on Hawthorne Lane, we were fully staffed. We had lab coats. We went in to process the scene for the potential evidence of maybe a homicide happened. And when we got done, we pretty much just shrugged our shoulders and left.
This second visit, however, turned out to be way more useful than initially thought. For a minute, Detective Messmore finally had the time to listen to Collier without his grandmother around. Again, he went over the details of what he heard that night, but also spoke of what his father had been up to since then.
Collier also.
Now, think of this, everybody. He's literally everybody's literally against him. He's the only one that knows that his mom wouldn't leave him. He thinks something's really strange that's going on. Everybody is against him, and he can't talk with grandma present or anybody else. Nobody's on his side, and typically this guy would have got away with it. Dr. Jack Boyle would have got away with something like this without having cell phones and forensics in 1989, 1990. You just saw that big giant house. Where did he even start to look for her? That's crazy. Yeah, Collier took advantage of any moment he had to save his life and find his mother. Right? He didn't know if she was alive or what. That's the doctor right there.
That after his father got back from that weekend in Erie, his shoulders and arms were very sore, and Collier had to rub liniment on him, which was unusual.
Messmore was impressed by the details Collier recalled in such a short burst. Seeing that his grandmother was walking toward them and would probably attempt to dismiss Collier once more, he quickly told the kid to call him at the station as soon as he could and gave him his card and left with Christine following behind him.
Normally, if you talk to 10, 11-year-olds, you kind of take part of what they say as being really accurate. But in his case, he was so convincing that I thought, I'm going to have to look into this some more.
Determined to find justice for his mother, Collier set out to find a way to talk to Messmore away from his home.
I went to school the next day, and I told the principal at the school, you need to call down at the Mansfield Police Department and ask for this guy named Lieutenant David Messmore.
Aware that his father could probably kill him for conspiring against him, Collier stuck to the safety of his school to discuss with Messmore. This relationship was of great use to the detective because he had been barred from entering the Boyles' house after his last visit yielded no results. It was almost as if nobody thought Jack could have possibly done something wrong to his wife.
I developed this rapport with Dave Messmore. He would come to school and I would be like, I told him first day, I was like, I'm going to go home. I'm going to run upstairs and I'm going to pull the bookcases out of the wall, the shelves, and look behind them and see if I can find my mother's body. I'm not even 12 years old this time.
Messmore was worried about Collier's safety and pressed him to stop investigating on his own. But knowing that the kid probably couldn't help himself, the detective made sure he understood the gravity of his situation. Collier needed to be absolutely certain he couldn't get caught, because if his father was truly a murderer, there was no way to guarantee he wouldn't take care of him in the same way he did Noreen.
These are the conversations I'm having with this man. I'm like, I know if she was going to leave, she would take this person, she would bring this. I'm going to see if that person's in the house.
And this back and forth went on for weeks. Messmore would ask Collier what he found inside the house, while Collier would ask him what progress the police made.
Man, that's scary at that age. I would have been really freaked out by that. I mean, his dad was abusing him already, and that's a big reason why he prompted him to go to the officers, because he was scared, number one, and he knew his mom wasn't going to leave, number two. So yeah, his life was definitely in danger. And you're right, Leanne, he did realize. I'm surprised at 11 years old he realized his mom was dead and not coming back. So he's in the house looking for a body to be found, looking behind a bookcase. That's crazy. Yeah.
Every morning, the kid would go to his school's principal's office and ask the same question.
You need to get him here. Like every day, I'm like wanting to talk to him. Like, what happens? What do you know? What do you this?
But there wasn't much to share on Messmore's side. His department was pretty much convinced that Jack's retelling of the events was correct. To them, this was only a woman who left after learning of her husband's cheating, not a murder, not an assault, not even a crime. So the detective had his back against the wall. It was only him and an 11-year-old boy against his whole department, against their whole town.
Unbeknownst to me, like he was catching from his captain, because it's like, okay, you're now investigating a doctor in our small town. We don't do that. Like they got into a fight, she left. He goes, yeah, but there's something about this kid.
As his captain was about to close the case, Collier came to Messmore with a new clue. The police had no proof of Sherry's involvement with Jack up to this point, but Collier, while his father left him alone in his truck to pay for gas, started going through the glove compartment and found 2 photographs of him and Sherry, inside and outside of his new home in Erie.
During this time, so I find the picture of the house. I tell Messmore about this.
Immediately, Messmore assembled his team once again. They contacted the real estate agent behind the transaction and all the hardware stores in Mansfield and Erie, asking if anybody had bought a shovel in the last month.
Now, think of this. Like I said, this is 1989. So they're doing a lot more work than normally they would have to do. And they Google Earth and checking your credit card receipts online, data dumps from your phone. Now, Savage Barbie, this tale is as old as it comes. This is the oldest story that we hear all the time. Oh yeah, she bolted out on me. She wanted a divorce and she stormed off. So yes, us as mama bears are not going anywhere, and he knew it. You covered the story since 1989. Wow, I did not know that. Since your 3-year-old baby, and Court TV had just started. Yeah, this is an old case, and it's repeated itself over and over and over. How many doctors are tired of their wives? They have too much money. They want a different woman, and instead of getting a divorce, they just take their lives. So yeah, this may be one of the first ones that you start watching on Court TV.
They even called Sherry herself, asking about the affair. This level of scrutiny tipped Jack off. There was someone working against him. The police couldn't know all of these details without someone feeding them information. And this is when he told Collier that they would be leaving for Florida the following day. When asked why, Jack was evasive. That same day, Collier called Murd3r in a panic.
He realized that, like, literally, this is the only witness to a potential murder, and this guy's going to kill his son.
After listening to Collier, the detective reassured him that they would get him out of Jack's house as soon as possible, and that they would stop investigating until they could guarantee his safety. The following day, CPS agents and police officers raided the house.
On the morning of January 24th, 1990, I woke up at 6 a.m. to these two strangers in my room, and they're literally like, you have 20 minutes to pack a bag and your things. We're leaving.
With Collier out of harm's way, Murd3r and the Mansfield Police Department went on with their investigation. First, they met with Michelle Barth, the realtor who sold the house to Jack. She explained that the woman who signed the contract with Jack wasn't Noreen.
The real estate agent described the young lady that was with Dr. Boyle as being pregnant and very young. And certainly that didn't resemble the photos that I had of Noreen.
She went on to explain how Jack pressured her client to allow him to move in early, insisting.
Wow. So he did all the wrong things. iPad, I'm glad you remember this, because Collier was the 11-year-old little guy in those pictures. Not so much a little guy anymore, but boy, was he brave, right? Wow. I didn't remember this story until I started watching it again and remembering his face. Collier's face is definitely not forgettable.
Insisting that the house should be entirely emptied by January 1st, but it was her last comment that truly shook Murd3r and his colleagues.
He says, if I were to break into the basement floor, what will I hit? What is underneath that floor?
And what was your response to that then?
Why? Why would you want to do something like this?
Next to Michelle Barth in the police list of clues were the hardware stores. Often, before or after committing a murder, the culprit will buy supplies to help dispose of the body, as seen in our recent coverage of the Sarah Maynard case. After making a few calls, Murd3r got a new clue. Apparently, 2 days before Noreen's disappearance, Jack rented a jackhammer at a local store. This information, paired with the realtor's declaration, got Murd3r thinking. It seemed almost too crazy to be true, but he got himself a warrant to search the Erie property, bringing with him a crew of technicians, equipped with shovels and pickaxes.
So as the technicians were on the floor and looking around, one of them went over to the wall of the concrete block basement and said, there's a little bit of new concrete. It's like a mortar or something. It's kind of soft.
This is funny because when you're looking back at this Jeep Sahara, you think 30 years is a blink of an eye, but you're listening to these detectives and you're like, I've heard this story. Even if it's not Collier's, I've heard this story 100 times, but from different men, right? Their wives ran off. They were going to get divorced and they took off with some man and who knows what happened. So it's weird to watch this because you're thinking, which case is that? How many cases have there been since then? Many. This story's getting old, Dr. Jack.
The whole basement had already been renovated when the police arrived. The floor was freshly painted gray. There was green carpet over most of the area, and there even was brand new shelving on each side of the room. But Murd3r didn't let any of this fool his judgment. When one of his men told him that the floor was soft, he asked them to tear the whole place apart.
At that point, after we'd knocked down the shelving and pulled up the indoor-outdoor carpeting, it's apparent that there was a little depression in the floor.
They started digging, and soon enough were struck by the foul smell. Indeed, there was a body entombed in the concrete, rendered unrecognizable by weeks of decomposition. Jack was immediately arrested, and a forensic team was dispatched to the scene. They found nothing in the house, nothing in the basement, and even looked at his cars.
We did vacuum sweepings from all the cars. We tried to see if there was any association with a victim in the car that would not be normal, and there was really nothing that was drawn of any value from the analysis of the Bureau.
Stuck with an unrecognizable body without any physical evidence to back their claims, the police didn't have much to bring to the upcoming trial, so Detective Murd3r paid a visit to Collier while he was in foster care. He intended to ask him to testify against his father at the trial, but before that, Collier had a few questions concerning his mother.
Yeah, so that was the first question I asked him was, did she look like she had peace? Was she okay? I think he said yes, she was dead, but these are the things that you go through and when you are trying to come to grips with something that is this tragic and dramatic. It's like my whole life had just changed in the blink of an eye.
At this point, both sides of his family completely cut ties with him, claiming that he was too young to testify and that he shouldn't be taken seriously. The detective in front of him seemed to be the only person able to listen and understand him in the turmoil. In a moment of weakness, the boy broke down crying in front of Murd3r.
I'm a kid sitting in foster care. I wrapped up this whirlwind of a case in my hometown. Like, I remember sitting in the bedroom and just kind of like in this really dark place. It's like at like 12 years old, like, what is my life going to look like? I have no family. I've lost my mother and my father. My family, nobody wants anything to do with me, right?
Man, that's crazy. I mean, all these years later, he's still emotional, and he talks about this quite often. He's gone on many shows to talk about this. Yeah, you become a profiler watching all these cases, absolutely. And you're like, wow, I've seen this so many times before. But this guy didn't go through this ever. This was his first time, and his family all doubted him to the point that he was in foster care. How scary is that? Your mom's missing, you know your dad's abusive, and then all of a sudden they're looking for your mom's body, trial's going to start, and you're in a foster home. Dang, I don't want to imagine.
Right.
Murd3r looked him dead in the eyes and told him that there was still a way to make this right. If he would agree to testify, he could finally prove them wrong and get justice for his mother. Without any hesitation, Collier said yes.
When the trial came, of course, I was not going to lie for him. I was not going to say I don't want to testify or anything. To me, felt like a lie because I know what happened. I knew she was dead. I knew all this. I was working with police, all that. I knew that this was the right thing to do, as much as it hurt.
5 months later, on June 4th, 1990, the trial started and Collier finally came face to face with his father.
Testimony continued today in the most notorious criminal trial in Richland County history. Dr. John Boyle is accused of killing his wife Noreen and burying her body in the basement of his new home in Erie, Pennsylvania.
The 12-year-old son of accused murderer Mansfield, Dr. John Boyle, finally took the stand.
Will you tell us who you are?
I'm Collier Landry Boyle.
Collier started by telling the jury of his father's infidelities, recalling his encounter with Sherry wearing his mother's ring, the pictures he found in Jack's truck, and the loud noises and screams he heard on New Year's Eve. Afterward, Sherry too took the stand.
We have a defendant here who was a womanizer, and he would engage in one affair after another. Sherry, have you recently had a baby?
Yes, I have.
And who is the father of that baby?
Jack Boyle.
The motive, prosecutors say, so he could move into that house with younger girlfriend Sherry Campbell, who was carrying his baby.
Wow, his wife was much prettier, by the way. Sorry about that, Sherry Campbell, but he had such a pretty mom. He looks like her quite a bit. But I mean, tell me, we've heard this story so many times. There are no cell phones. You can't really look at records, maybe old phone records, but there's nothing to check. And his dad's on file, or his dad's on trial. And this guy is the biggest witness they have is Collier. Yeah, he had to testify against him. And to this day, I'm going to show you a clip after where he's visiting his dad in prison to this day. And his dad is up for parole in October of 2025 after serving, well, he had 20 years and then 18 months for abuse of a corpse. So that's crazy. His dad can be out by next year.
Actually better than a soap opera because it happened right in our own town.
I did not kill Noreen. I never harmed her at all.
A Richland County jury watched a gruesome videotape of Noreen Boyle's body being exhumed from a shallow concrete grave. It was like seeing something out of a horror movie, only this was real.
After a month-long trial, the jury rendered their judgment.
We, the jury in this case, find the defendant, John F. Boyle Jr., guilty of the offense as charged in the indictment.
The judge said he would tolerate no outbursts in the courtroom, but they cheered in the hallway when Dr. John Boyle was found guilty of killing his wife Noreen.
But Collier's ordeal wasn't over yet. For years, members of his family tried to force a retrial. Collier's uncle even went as far as claiming that he talked to Noreen after the murder, and that the body they found belonged to someone else. From his jail cell, Jack reviewed the autopsy report and spotted many errors and inconsistencies. This prompted the prosecution to exhume Noreen's body 4 years later and perform a DNA test, since the technique didn't exist at the time of trial.
That was where he tried to poke a hole, and a major hole, in the prosecution's case. But forensic evidence actually backfired on him and showed conclusively that it was in fact Noreen Boyle.
Following these,
wow, think about that. What forensics were available back then? And they sat back there with they got a shovel, like a hand shovel, and we're digging it out. And Melissa, don't worry, all of you guys are right on time. I'm going to wrap this up and then go into my 4 o'clock today. You live in Ohio and remember when this case happened. Michelle Allender, what's up? Good to see you guys. Yeah, this is who we're gonna have on next week, is that little boy that's not a little boy anymore, Collier Landry. Yeah, thank God for DNA. Yeah, you're early for the next show. All right. Let's finish
Events.
up.
Collier and Elizabeth were separated. He was sent to a loving foster family, grew up in relative normalcy, and eventually became a successful filmmaker. But his father never stopped harassing him. Every few months, he would receive a letter from jail, and this went on for most of his life.
Over that 25 years, my father did everything he could in his power to have me rescind my testimony, to help him get out, anything that this man could do to manipulate me.
But 6 years ago, Collier set his foot to the ground and took matters into his own hands once again. He set out to produce a documentary, finally lifting the veil upon his side of the story.
Now, in the film's final scene, I confront my incarcerated father in prison. I'm going to have that moment where I can ask this man why.
But Collier never got his answer. Jack's disillusion was just too ingrained. He simply had to accept that he'll probably never know why his father did what he did. But what seemed like a failure ended up helping him realize something much more important.
Then I realized something. Why looks into the past. But what now? What now looks to the future?
In a way, his story has never been about the why, but always about what now. And what he's doing now is helping others move past their traumas through his own victim advocacy.
So when it comes to resilience, biography is not destiny. You can be.
And that's why we're having him on here, because he's all about victim advocacy. He's all over the place. Once you actually look him up on YouTube, you're gonna say, "Oh wow, I know who that guy is." Mansfield in Pennsylvania, I believe. I believe that's Pennsylvania. We're running the story real quick. Next Tuesday, he's going to be on, and you guys can ask him what happened to his sister. When's the last time you saw your dad? Are you looking forward to him getting out on parole? And anything else that you want to. How his life has been. What's he producing? He's a very successful person. And Jack Stormo said eye candy too, as well as inspirational. So, all right, let's finish this up so I can get into my next one. We're just about done.
Both the author and the audience of your life.
All right, so since being denied parole in 2010, Jack Boyle finally admitted to some degree of responsibility during the production of Collier's documentary, A Murder in Mansfield, in 2017. His next parole hearing is October 2025. I'm going to show you a clip real quick of the two of him actually going and visiting his dad there, and then I'm going to wrap it up because I have to get to my next show. Check it out.
One of the things I've always been interested in my life about, ever since you murdered my mother, is the collateral damage of violence.
All right, so that is kind of leaving you with a little bit of a... All right, so I'm trying to leave you guys with a bit of a cliffhanger. We have 98 people in here on a quick pop-up. Save those questions for next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Hit the like button if you like the way I present things. Subscribe if you haven't. Get your memberships and share. This is my recap of the Collier Landry story, and he will be back on next week to tell you personally what his future entails, what's going on, and with all the questions, hopefully we can get the answer. I will see you guys in about 8 minutes on the next live, which is Madeline Soto. I'm going to go over the timeline, and then we're going to finish up the audio. All right? Hit the like button. I love you guys, and I'll see you back real soon.
Guilty of crime.
I want to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed my content, please share this video, like, and subscribe. You can also follow me over at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, or Gmail. If you'd like to donate to my channel, you can use Cash App or Venmo or PayPal. Thank you very much in advance. Guilty of crime.
Are you guilty of crime?